Do you ever feel like the idea of getting close to someone, not necessarily physically, but more psychologically, makes you feel a bit uncomfortable? Because something about getting too close too fast with someone feels way too overwhelming. So you end up keeping people at arm's length. It's almost like, nah, I'm good. Please just leave me alone respectfully. And you tend to be someone who keeps to themselves, whether that's your emotions, your plans, or whatever is going in your head. And it's not even about romantic relationships. It's more so about how you end up interacting with people on a general basis. But if someone were to ask you why you are like this in the first place, you may not be able to put your finger as to why. And I can give you the answer, which is the fact that you're probably avoidant. And if you've seen some of my videos on this channel, you may get this sort of vibe. Like, sure, you may actually enjoy the content and you find it relatable, but you may also feel this emotional distance. Like, you don't really know who I am. And I'm going to be honest, this video is more so for me than anyone else. But if you can relate to any of this, hopefully this can help you in your own life. Especially if you feel like your brain is wired similar to me. And this idea about talking about your emotions kind of feels like an inefficient use of your time, since you understand how quickly emotions can shift on a given moment. So you learn to logically push it aside and focus on something which is a higher priority, which is usually your goals or your long-term plan. And it's because you're a bit conscious of people getting in the way of whatever you're focused on in that given moment. But this kind of emotional distance can have an impact on both yourself and the people around you, especially someone on the receiving end who you would deem as the quote-unquote anxious type, as they will start wondering if you even like them, or if you even care. And it becomes this mental loop that runs 24/7 in their minds, as they start thinking to themselves, did I do something wrong? Am I the problem? And it creates this sort of dynamic where one person craves emotional and physical closeness, while the other seeks space and independence. And if you resonate more with the avoidant side, you may see yourself as this sort of free spirit, someone who values self-sufficiency, solitude, and someone who's in control of their emotions. And this idea of being dependent on someone else for your emotional needs starts to feel more like a weakness. You may start to find yourself thinking, what needs? I'm fine on my own. And in some cases, there is an element of truth to that statement. But at the same time, there's most likely a part of you that does genuinely crave the sort of trust, genuine connection, and emotional intimacy. But what ends up happening time and time again is that we end up closing ourselves off from other people. And I do think I know where all of this stems from. And maybe you can think back to your own life on this. There was probably that one moment where you decided to let somebody in, but all you were met with is disappointment, betrayal, or this general feeling of unease. And from that point onwards, it probably became a lot easier to suppress that need for closeness, rather than risk yourself being vulnerable and getting hurt again. And so you build habits. Actually, let me rephrase that. You build walls so that you're able to create this sort of psychological distance and adopt this sort of independent lifestyle. But here's the thing, in my opinion, this way of thinking is a bit flawed. Because while this sort of lifestyle may protect you in the short term, it might actually be stifling your happiness in the long run. Even if you're a bit like me, who doesn't need constant social interactions to feel fulfilled. And what's interesting is that if you take a moment to think about any of the best memories or experiences that you've had so far in your life, chances are they're most likely with other people. And I'm talking about the laughter, the support, and the shared moments. That is what you're going to remember for decades. Now, if it was possible to give my younger self some advice, it would be this. The first thing is I would become a bit more self-aware on my own dialogue and how I end up talking to myself when someone ends up getting a bit close. Because sometimes we begin to notice these small flaws or quirks, but that shift in our brain, it's our brain's way of subtly pulling back. So the next time you catch yourself with that urge, just catch yourself and just stop and question it. Because a lot of the times, it's not even the other person. It's more so about how uncomfortable you feel about yourself letting someone in and getting that close with you. Now, the second one is communication. And I'm talking calm, direct communication, which could have saved me so much emotional energy when I was younger. Because instead of emotionally withdrawing and ghosting others when things are uncomfortable, hoping that situation would get better, try and maybe express what you're feeling and set boundaries so any sort of resentment doesn't end up building up. And of course, at first, this sort of direct sort of communication with your emotions can feel a little bit awkward and uncomfortable, especially if all your life you've been avoiding that sort of emotional drama. But trust me when I say this is life-changing. And while you say this, you want to be neutral, calm, and direct with the other person. Because unfortunately, most people aren't mind readers, because we often assume that the other person knows how we're actually feeling. But communicating like this clearly and directly ends up giving both parties what they actually want at the end of the day. I appreciate you watching the video, and if you're still interested, you can check out one of the videos that are popping up on screen right now.